This is one of the most important and least known chapters in the Bible. So, I'm going to begin. And you have heard this before. I have talked about this before, and I've done Bible studies on this before, but I don't have many more chances to remind you about it, so I'm hitting you once again, and who knows, it may come around again before December. We'll see. So, it begins like this. Chapter 10 begins like this. One of the centurions of the Italica cohort stationed in Caesarea was called Cornelius. He and the whole of his household were devout and God-fearing, and he gave generously to Jewish causes and prayed constantly to God. Stopping right there, what do you know about this guy Cornelius just from those few verses? What do you know? He's a good guy, okay? What else do you know? He's a traveler. What makes you think he's a traveler? I don't think so. No, he's stationed in Caesarea. So why is he stationed there? What's that tell you about him? What? I'm hearing so many mumbles and I'm not... He's a soldier for who?
Rome.
For Rome. He's a Roman soldier, which means he is part of the occupying force that is holding Israel, what we call now Israel today, under the power of the Roman government. He's that guy, okay? He's a centurion, which means he's sort of like a sergeant major, okay? Everybody with me now? That's important to know. Is he Jewish? No, he is not Jewish. Okay, going on. I'm reading starting at verse 3. One day, about the 9th hour, he had a vision in which he distinctly saw the angel of God come into his house and call out to him, "Cornelius!" He stared at the vision in terror and exclaimed, "What is it, Lord?" The angel answered, "Your prayers and charitable gifts have been accepted by God. Now you must send some men to Jaffa and fetch a man called Simon, known as Peter, who is lodging with Simon the tanner, whose house is by the sea." When the angel who had said this had gone, Cornelius called 2 of the slaves and a devout soldier of his staff, told them all that had happened, and sent them off to Jaffa. The next day, while they were still on their journey and had only a short distance to go before reaching the town, Peter went into the housetop at about the 6th hour to say his prayers. He felt hungry, and he was looking forward to his meal. But before it was ready, he fell into a trance, and saw heaven thrown open and something like a big sheet being let down to earth by its 4 corners. It contained every kind of animal, reptile and bird. A voice then said to him, "Now, Peter, kill and eat." And that's Peter's vision right there. And it makes me wonder that was this vision triggered by the fact that what was he doing up on the roof? He was waiting for something. He was praying, but he was waiting for something while he was praying. Yeah, he's waiting for a meal. So, and then all of a sudden he has this vision in which he's told to eat these things. Well, continuing on. Verse 14. But Peter answered, "Certainly not, Lord. I have never eaten anything profane or unclean." Again, a second time, the voice spoke to him, "What God has made clean, you have no right to call profane." This was repeated 3 times, and then suddenly the container was drawn up to heaven again. So Peter has this vision of a big, sheet coming down from heaven, and in it is all kinds of animals, clean and unclean. Now, every religion has its iconic practices, things that they do that are somewhat essential. It's not the whole religion, but it's symbolic of the whole religion. Doctrines, policies, practices, etc., any kind of thing like that can be it. For Christians, it might be nothing as simple as attending church. We kind of expect that church attendance will be part of a Christian's life. They'll go regularly. For Muslims, what would be the iconic thing for Muslims? Prayers, yeah, the prayers, the 5 prayers a day. We would recognize that as part of it. What might Catholics have as their iconic practice? Could be a lot of things. Maybe saying the rosary, something like that. There are all of these things. And for the Jews of Jesus' time, they built their faith around the law of Moses, which is in the Bible that we still use. But in that law, there were 2 commandments that stuck out and became the kind of iconic practice of Jews of Jesus' time. And one of them was laws about keeping the Sabbath day holy, which means have the Sabbath as a day of rest and of meditation and prayer, and not to do any work on the Sabbath at all. And the other one was what you ate, the kosher rules, as we refer to them today. And there's still a great many Jews who follow both of those in the world today, who follow both of those practices. But in Jesus' time, those were really important. You could hardly call yourself a good believing Jew if you didn't keep the Sabbath and keep the rules of kosher, although Jesus himself broke those rules often and on occasion when it was important to. So, Peter is being asked to break one of the iconic rules. He is being asked to eat food that is not kosher. That's where the conflict lies. Peter is being told that he should not worry about that anymore. But why? Why would it matter what Peter eats? Why would it matter? Here we go. Let's continue on. Verse 17. In case you're at a loss over the meaning, Peter was still at a loss over the meaning of the vision he had seen when the men sent by Cornelius arrived. All of this was happening all at once. They asked where Simon's house was, and now they were standing at the gate, calling out to know if Simon, known as Peter, was lodging there. While Peter's mind was still on the vision, the Spirit told him, "Look, some men have come to see you. Hurry down and do not hesitate to return with them. It was I who told them to come." Peter went down and said to them, "I am the man you are looking for. Why have you come?" They said, "The centurion Cornelius, who was an upright and God-fearing man, highly regarded by the entire Jewish people, was told by God through a holy angel to send for you and bring you to his house and listen to what you have to say." So Peter asked them in and gave them lodging. Why were Cornelius' servants standing outside yelling for Peter? The answer is not because doorbells had not yet been invented. Why are they standing outside and yelling for Peter? Yes, I hear somebody saying it from the background, because the house where they were going in is a house of Jewish people, and they know, the Cornelius' servants know, that if they go in there, they defile that house. They make that house impure. They make it unholy. So that is what's stopping them from going in. So they're being respectful by standing outside and shouting. And then Peter comes out and talks to them, and then what does he do? What does he do? He asks them in. He asks them in. He invites them to come into his house. Are you kidding me? Jewish Peter asks non-Jewish Cornelius to come on in? Are you getting this? When you read that passage, go back and look at that verse again. Verse 23. See it? Somebody read it out loud. Somebody, anybody. Is it whacking you right between the eyes? Are you getting this? Anybody? I'm trying to make you get it. Peter invites them in. Let's keep going. Peter asked them in and gave them lodging. Verse 23. Next day he was ready to go off with them, accompanied by some of the brothers from Jaffa. They reached Caesarea the following day, and Cornelius was waiting for them. He had asked his relations and close friends to be there, and as Peter reached the house, Cornelius went up to meet him, fell at his feet, and did him reverence. But Peter helped him up. "Stand up," he said. "I am only a man." Talking together, oh boy, here it comes again. Are you ready for this? Talking together, they went in to meet all the people assembled there. And Peter said to them, "You know it is forbidden for Jews to mix with people of another race and visit them, but God has made it clear to me that I must not call anyone profane or unclean. That is why I made no objection to coming when I was sent for. But I should like to know why exactly you sent for me. Jewish believers who had accompanied Peter were astonished that the gift of the Holy Spirit could be poured out on Gentiles too, since they could hear them speaking strange languages and proclaiming the greatness of God. Peter himself then said, "Could anyone refuse the water of baptism to these people, now that they have received the Holy Spirit just as we have?" I wrote this sermon more than 2 weeks ago, and I was impelled to write it by the comments made by the president about the 4 members of the Congress, that the 4 women that he said should go back to where they came from, even though 3 of the 4 of them were already back where they came from, but said that they should go back where they came from. I am old enough, and that means most of you are also, and because of where I lived, fully aware of the phrase, "go back where you came from," and what it really means. It's not just a statement about you belong somewhere else. It was entirely a part of the resistance to the civil rights movement in this country. It was part of the resistance to that people said, you should go back where you came from. And there are people right here today who would have had that said to them. And there are people here today who might have had someone that they knew say it. When the president says, "go back where you came from," he is calling up that image of that kind of racism. And racism makes no sense and cannot be held by us. For one thing, there are no races. How do you tell a Bullock's Oriole from a Baltimore Oriole? Or how do you tell a Carolina chickadee from a black-capped chickadee? You can hardly tell by looking. How do we know they are different species? Anybody know the answer? Different species can't have babies that can have babies. In other words, they're different species if they can't have grandchildren. The best example of that, the most famous example of that, is what do you get if you breed a horse and a donkey? You get a mule. And can a mule have babies? They're sterile. They're born sterile. They're unable to do that. A mule can't do that. Do you know where the word mulatto comes from? It means a small mule. And we have used that term to define people that we consider to be of 2 separate races. But our image of races is purely a construct, an intellectual construct. There are no other human races. All of us are of the same race. We can all interbreed, as we all know. We are one race. There is simply no such thing as other races of human beings. They don't exist. We think they do. We make that up, but it's simply not true. The other problem is we cannot do the work we are called to do if we are racist. We cannot. We cannot do the work that we are called to do if we are racist. Peter could not take his idea that he was somehow better than the other people. He could not take that idea with him to carry the message of Jesus to them. He had to abandon that, and it wasn't an easy thing to do. And it's right there in the Bible that God welcomes all races, all people. This is an important message for us to have. We cannot accept this. When we have racism in our country, we have situations like what happened what happened on Friday, when a young man who believes it's right for him to kill immigrants picks up a rifle and goes out and does that. And we cannot have peace in this country, we cannot have justice in this country, and we cannot claim to be Christians when we are racist. Now, we all struggle with it. There are racists here in this congregation. I know that there are. There are racists all around us. There are racists in our government. We know this. But we cannot accept that that's the way it should be or should stay that way. And one of the things I am happy to say is that this is a church where there is racism, an element of it, but it is overwhelmed by the love that we have for one another. It is overwhelmed by that, and that is so important about who we are. We cannot have this kind of thing in our church. We can't have it in our communities. We can't have it in our government. We can't have it within ourselves. Let us find God's grace to let it go. To let it go, to follow Peter's example and say, now I get it. Now I understand. We can't blame it all on them because there is no them. There's only us. There is no them. There's only us. Amen.
You've been listening to a sermon by Reverend Stephen Carnahan, pastor of High Street Congregational Church in Auburn, Maine. If you feel inspired by what you hear, you're invited to join us in person for worship services every Sunday morning, starting at 10 o'clock. Of course, you can always listen to Steve's sermons on the web. New sermons are posted every Monday by midday. Please explore this website for more information about our church, or visit our Facebook page at High Street Congregational Church, UCC, where you'll find the video version of Steve's sermons as well. We hope that God's presence will be known to you every hour of every day. May God's blessings rest upon you now and always. See you next week.